Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for another Watercolour Wednesday. I've been playing with the Gansai Tambi watercolour pans, the Art Nouveau set, and several of you were mentioning in comments that you had gold ones. And part of my brain was thinking, that's interesting. Pretty sure I bought some gold watercolour paints at some point. I wonder if they were the Gansai Tambis. And it turns out they are, tucked away in a cupboard. Unopened as far as I can see. Shamefully, another one. Excuse my fingers, I've been up to messy stuff earlier today. So I'm gonna have a quick little swatch of these and then a bit of colour playtime, because it's exactly the right time of year to rediscover one's shimmering colours and golds. And I note there's also a white gold that looks right up my street. As an initial thought, this one, and this one feel like things that I'm going to love, and this one, maybe a little bit less. But yeah, I thought I'd have a quick little swatch of them. Silver, gold, metallic, all of that kind of business ought to work reasonably well on craft, and black as well. So I've cut a little bit of card of each of those. I'm going to give these a spritz so that they can start just getting ready to play. And then I'm going to have a look. Because white gold, it seems to me, probably won't show up that well on white card. I don't know. Let me just zoom in so that you can see all this happen. And I thought once I've got this swatching, which should be pretty quick, done, well, it doesn't not show up, you know. It's rather fine. Lovely sort of pearlescent, I would say. That is sort of mother of pearl affair. Sorry about the shadows. It's the afternoon and it's somewhat gloomy outside. Well, it's not gloomy, it's just one of those white skies that's just done nothing else all day. Yeah, there we go. So, and how metallic it is right now compared to how metallic it is once it's dry is also a point of interest, but I think you can probably see how that is catching the light rather brilliantly already. I didn't put quite as much pigment probably onto the craft, so to be fair, I should probably put a little bit more. And again, with these paints, as with all watercolours, it's adding water that allows a bit of the magic to happen and allows them to spread out. But at the moment, I just want to concentrate that pigment so that I can see it. Let's do the next one. So that was white gold. This is light gold, so let's pick up some of that. Yeah, a little bit of colour playtime after this. So what I'm planning to do is just throw a bit of another colour onto some paper and then do some wet in wet. So putting wet paint into wet paint, which is one of those standard watercolour techniques that can really get you rather gorgeous results. So white gold, light gold. Now we've got champagne gold. Ooh, that's got an almost rose gold feel to it. I bet there is a rose gold as well by now, don't you? So in a minute I'll wave these around again so that you can see the metallics as they're drying, so that you can see the gleam in the light, I mean. So white gold, light gold, champagne gold, yellow gold. Probably not going to be me, but could be useful in certain situations. I mean, that really is gold. That's quite something. That's got a shine, even without waving it around in the light. I can see that is pretty impressively metallic. Let's have a look at the next one, which calls itself red gold. Again, you would think probably not me, but there's a sort of pleasurable I would call that a sort of Renaissance gold. It's that it's got that medieval look to it, almost a brassy gold. That's rather nice. And then you can see why it was worth doing on the craft and the black, can't you? I think. What do you think you are? Blue gold? You don't look very blue to me. You're a pretty colour though. Does that really say blue gold? It does. I don't know what they mean by that, because I wouldn't have said that had any hint of blue about it. I mean, it's a slightly cooler tone than the red, but it's still a pretty warm-toned affair. I might just put a little bit more. I got more generous as I went on, didn't I? So I might just spread out a little bit more champagne gold in these two areas, just to have a look at it. And on here. And I might spread out just a little bit more of the light gold. So another layer of this should intensify it somewhat. It's interesting how it's virtually vanished on the craft. It's clearly a very similar colour tone somehow underneath. And I'm definitely going to enjoy that white gold in various situations. It's feeling definitely wintry to me. There's a starlit look about all of this, which is quite exciting, and potentially snowy as well. Grand. So let's take these for a little spin in the light, because even on the white, that's when you're going to catch the shimmer of the white gold. There's a little go at the craft. Still drying, as you can see, but still a good hit of metallic shimmer going on. And there's the black. There we go. So this little pad is, who is this made by? Okay, Handblock. This Handbook, beg its pardon, Handbook. One of their watercolour pads, quite an interesting size. This is where I swatched initially my watercolour pencils, distress watercolour pencils, before I did the full-on separated swatching. I'll link to that in case you're interested. I've just put some of that on the page by flipping over, and even that's shining, that leftover bit there. So I could do a bit of watercolour playtime in here, but I'm inclined to leave these to dry fully and have a look at those shortly. And what I will do is, I've been digging around in my watercolour supplies and came up with a bunch of these pads. This is fluid watercolour paper. I've got a little one of those that is postcard sized, got one that's a bit bigger, and I've got this old Prima one which I just had a little play on earlier, and my feeling is that having kept it too long, it's lost a bit of its movement. This is something I read about with watercolour paper, that if you don't use it, you lose it. That there is some watercolour papers with a coating or a sizing, and if you don't make use of them, they will lose their ability to move paints around. So this one I've been trying a bit this morning, and was a little bit disappointed to find that maybe that's what's happened with that one, or maybe it was just such a cheap pad, or a kind of mixed media watercolour paper as opposed to watercolour paper. But my thought is that what I would like to do, I've got my big tray of American Journey watercolours, just the mixed up tray full of all kinds of things. Junebug is on here, Prussian blue I think is on here, and my inclination is to take a couple of these darks out for a ride and just create a nice soft background on here. Well, that seems to be moving okay. So the water in these jam jars that I'm just dipping into is, I need to bear in mind, already slightly tinted with metallics. I might drop in just a little more variation of colour, pick up a different one, just so I'm creating a nice moist background. Going to keep it moist as I go in for a bit of a spatter with, let's see, what's going to be a nice contrast. Let's put in a bit of this red gold. Need to get it nice and wet. I might bring in my spatter brush if this doesn't feel useful, but what I want to do is just let that move in the wet. That's rather good. I'm thinking of sort of maybe berry clusters hanging in the sky, in which case I could, just with the other end of the brush, or you could do this with a credit card. I'm just going to put in a sort of thought of branches. And then I think we might put in a little bit of this white gold just to see what that does. Again, with a spatter to start with. That's slightly smaller spats because it's less liquid. That's giving us a nice snowy look. Let's put a bit more of that. I'm really just thinking backgrounds. I'm not thinking anything necessarily specific with this. Quite enjoying that. Let me hold that up. That's going to give us a nice metallic shimmer as that dries. It's all shimmering at the moment because the paint is wet. I'm wondering whether I want a contrast to the shimmer, which is to get out some of my Bleedproof white ink. And for that I am going to use my spatter brush, I think. I'll just put a bit of that on the mat here. And that should give us a proper sort of snowy feel. So just starting to create maybe some wintry backgrounds that might go on to be something else somewhere else. Let's pop that down. Oh, there's still lots of lovely paint on there. So one of the reasons I got 3 of these out is so that I can move quite fluidly from one to the next. This was, did I say this is a Prima pad? So let's see what we can get. Yeah, that, can you see how that smear has just stayed completely put on there? So that is either because this is very cheap paper. I think it is because it's also sort of curling up. Let's create a bit of texture a different way with this one. Yeah, it's sinking into the paper. It's just not behaving well. Look at those places. Oops, excuse me. It's really kind of grabbed onto the paper around the edges. It's not moving around. That streak has stayed put. So all of that is telling me that compared to this one, where that paint just stayed mobile, there's a whole other thing going on with this paper. That's not an unpleasant background. I might hold on to that and do a bit of brayering to intensify that. I'm just looking at my thumb and how mucky it's got. So instead of that, let's take ourselves onto this one, and I might come in with something a little bit grayer. I'm just picking up colours that are on the tray here. I'm going to come in with, ooh, yes, that's got that kind of beachy duck egg. Beachy if I'm doing it in summer. Now that I'm in winter, that feels like a much more sort of wintry, bleak kind of affair. Let's see what that gets us. That's going to go beautifully with gold. That's got a beautiful kind of almost green tone behind. And I'm going to get myself a fairly smooth surface, but I don't mind that there's a bit of texture going on. There's a bit of gubbins that was either in the brush or on the, it's most likely on the tray because that's been gathering dust, literally gathering dust. Going to start with a little bit of the snowiness, I think, because that's giving us a lovely starting point if we're thinking festive. And then maybe let's go in with a little bit of the blue gold, since they think it's blue. Maybe it goes quite well with other blues. Or maybe we go with a full-on glimmer of this yellow gold. I hope you can see how that's kind of shooting out. There's a magical movement of that because the page is still very wet. If I let that dry a little bit, I'll get a slightly different effect. In fact, I'm quite inclined to come back into here and go with one of these paler golds, maybe the champagne gold, and add a little bit of that to the mix, because now this is a bit drier. This should stay a little more firm in its landing. And some of this is sort of not dissimilar. there's a good double negative to some of the salty effects that we got. Oh, look, that hit over there and I liked it, so I'm going again. You didn't see any of that happen because I zoomed in. There's the downside to zooming in. So this is creating a real sort of almost a bokeh effect, that explosion of light going on in the background. I'm partly regretting putting in those little squiggles at the moment, although if they go that way, that could be quite a nice game. Just wondering, you can see there's still a shimmer on this, so a watery shimmer tells me the paint is still wet, at least in places. Just wondering about going in with some slightly darker splats. Just pick that up and go for a contrast in the other direction. So there's a snowiness, an iciness. I don't really know what I'll do with these. I might stamp some greenery, some berries. There's a beautiful depth building up on this one now. So if you go with kind of varying amounts of wetness, if you spatter on when things are very wet, that's going to spread out into that paint. If I wait until it dries, I'm going to get much more precision to my spatter. So you can create these glorious variations. What I might do is slice off this. So this is on a block, which is great. If you've got a block pad for watercolour, it saves you having to stretch out the paper, because that paper is not going to curl up as you apply your watery watercolours, because it's glued down at the sides. So a watercolour block is a really great pad to have for watercolouring, because as I say, it holds that paper in place and won't let it. I'm just looking at this one, and there are some quite nice little, they've spattered from the background, I think. So let's just be friendly and give this one a chance to shine as well. I think those gold spats are going to be quite fun to play with. Might pop in a couple of little stripes of shimmering colour. Let's see, maybe the white gold. Maybe we just, since this is already looking a bit odd with those edges, let's play with spreading out some of these metallics and see what they'll do if they go walkabout. I'm going to let that dry and then see where I'm at. What was I doing? Oh yeah, I was going to start another one here. So we've got a couple on the go up there. Let them dry. And I'm going to start another fairly blue one, I think. Maybe this middle blue. Just get some of that on the brush. I could start by wetting the paper, but I'm actually quite interested in just not getting it too watery for this go. It's another beautiful sort of almost night sky affair. I think this time I might let it dry just a little bit more before I put any gold in, but I will put in some white while it's still quite wet, and then we'll come back with some white later. So that's just creating texture in that quite wet page. Look again at how wet that is. This one is on its way to drying. So on this one, I could now put in some darker spatter and it should stay put more precisely. Just allowing that sense of depth to build. Where it's hitting really wet paper, it will still move. And I am going to go in with some more white on here. Need a little more water on that to get it to move. Just adding some snowy spatter onto that one. But now that that's dry in places, that bleed-proof white spatter should stay put fairly precisely. Going to let that carry on drying, and I'm maybe going to do one more. I'm really enjoying this one that's just got the simple white spatter at the moment. That's drying. I might put in just a touch of gold later on. Thinking about knocking some of this back So those dark ones are a bit too dark for me. They will dry paler because watercolour does dry paler, but at the moment that's bothering my eye a little bit, so I'm just going to knock it back, which takes me back to that sense of depth and texture. And I might do one more big one, which means I need to find my knife again and just slice off from the block. Usually there's one place in the block where it's not glued down. That's where you insert the knife, and then you can just take it around the edges. Strictly, it would be better to let it dry on the block, but then I can't use the bit underneath, which is what I want to do. So I'm going to go back in with one more bluey version, but I'm going to pick up some of these grey greens at the same time. Let's take that down onto the page and see what we've got. Yeah, that's beautiful. Then I'm just going to use some water to move it across the page. So again, we're going for a slightly lighter one, and even a bit of ombre into that, except that I'm going to put some more colour in here. So again, I'm not going for a sort of perfect flat wash, because we're creating textured backgrounds. I don't want a completely flat wash. I might go again with some of this. I'm really enjoying the effect of the ink into the watercolor. It's creating gorgeous texture. And I might go for some fairly soft gold ones into that background as well, maybe the light gold, just to buy us some of that shimmer in the long run. So the water as it dries will become matte. The shimmer should stay shimmery. Going to go with a slightly stronger gold. Let's get a bit of this red gold into the mix. I might stay a little bit precise about where I'm applying it. I'm going to lift that up and let you see how, if you just let it do its thing, it will just kind of spread out into your background. I'm quite enjoying this gradation of golds, as it were, so that you've got light gold, white gold. It's really giving that effect of depth because the dark ones come into the foreground. Okay, a couple of bits of gold landed on this page, so let's let it happen. I'm going to go blue, and I'm going to go champagne. It's facing away from the light, so I don't know that you necessarily saw that happen. So again, those splatters, because they've gone onto a fairly dry background, should stay fairly spattery. There's not much gold going on this one, so but I quite like it. So I think what I'm going to go is maybe with some white gold for this one. So that again, I'm going to hopefully achieve the shimmer without necessarily heading into complete gold land. I want a little bit of you on here as well. Oh, so look at that stripe of shimmer that we've got going down that background. That's quite spectacular. It's a little bit like ooh, icicles. Let's see if we can do that. Sorry, I got distracted from what I was doing with the other one. I'm going to put some along this top. It's not going to work terribly well on this paper, is it? I just wanted to see if I could get it to dribble down. Let's put a bit more of the metallic pigment in there. It's partly because this paper is not happy, but maybe I can encourage a kind of icicle effect with the brush, given the paper doesn't want to flow. Let's see how that dries. I have a feeling that might be quite nice when it dries. Where were we? That one's got some shimmer going on. That one's got some real bouquet depth to it. Enjoying that. And that's deliciously snowy. That's somewhere in between. Oh, look at the shimmer of that as it catches the light. And that one's delicately pretty. I might go for a couple of, I'm enjoying the darker dots on there. I don't want them too dark, as you know, I ended up taking dots away when they were too dark last time. But let's see if we just pick up some of this grey green. Actually, that'll be better with my actual spatter brush, except that's covered in white. So let's get the white off. Come and pick up some of this. That could be quite good. And as it goes on, again, that's a bit too dark for my liking. But as long as I come in time with that paper towel, it just picks up a bit of that pigment and lets it fall back into the background. So I'm thinking these are going to be rather nice with maybe some winter greenery layered over them. Altogether, quite enjoyable swatching and little backgrounds. So I hope you've enjoyed that little bit of watercolour playtime. It's always nice to test out metallics and opaques on other papers. So that's part of what went on today with these Gansai Tambi metallic gold paints that I dug out of my cupboard. No idea, again, how long ago I did that. And then just the start of some snowy, wintry backgrounds coming your way. Thanks so much for your company. Leave any comments or questions down below. I'll try to link to anything relevant videos wise, and of course I'll leave a list of the ingredients we've used here today in the description down below. Thanks so much for your company. If you've enjoyed that, give me a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, I would love to have your company on this creative journey. Happy crafting all.